I want to introduce the work package that dealt with validation and take-up of tools. And the boring bit, actually. I will just tell you a little bit about how we prepared this, what our focus was. But the most exciting presentations come after me. That's the work the libraries in the project did with the take-up and validation of tools, their experiences, their use cases, and etc. So what I want to do as an introduction is simply explain what we did, what our focus was, and how we got everybody to work so hard within the project, really. There's many tools and linguistic resources that have been produced, and they never seem to make it to the productive environment in cultural heritage institutions that do digitization. So the Succeed project wanted really to investigate and explore how what the issues are and what would be a best way of evaluating these tools in a productive environment for content holders, and what could tool providers learn from how they offer their tools. That's a little bit what we try to do. What were the steps we took? We did an inventory of existing tools and resources focused on digitization of historical text. We then identified libraries willing to use and evaluate the tools. We had 4 consortium libraries, but we wanted external libraries, like we called it in the project, to work with the tools as well. We defined criteria for to validate and evaluate the tools. We provided training material. We just not simply gave the documentation of a tool which accompanies a tool. We did some instruction. We provided support. And we'll end this experience with a blueprint on validation and take-up of tools, which will be made available. So, in brief, you make a survey, you select based on criteria what tools you deem worthy to be tested out by libraries. You produce evaluation forms and an evaluation procedure and criteria, and you start the evaluation. So they're basically the task of survey and selection of tools. The goals were, we want tools, we want existing ground truth data for evaluation, to have an inventory of that, and lexicon data for digitization, because we know that lexica for historical text function very well in the context of OCR. So, and then we had to select candidate tools for implementation at cultural heritage institutions. We did a taxonomy of tools based on roughly the digitization workflow called image processing tools, text recognition, layout analysis, text processing, metadata processing, and some auxiliary tools. We defined attributes. How can a tool be used in a digitization process, and other requirements the tools had. We made an overview, and we did a further assessment and further short list of tools. And for those of you who want to know how we selected, we had an overview of about 213 tools at the time, and our criteria for selection were, there were 3 knockout criteria. If a tool had no trial version available, it would not make it to the short list. There was supposed to be sufficient documentation and support available, and proof of actual usage of the tool with evaluation information, not a tool that is purely a prototype that didn't make it. And further selection of then that second round of selection was the robustness of the tool, the number of languages a tool could process, would it be trainable for other languages, and the maturity of the tool. That were about the criteria to go from the 213 tools we had in our inventory to a tool list we presented to the libraries. So this tool overview is still available on the website of the Center of Competence. You can find it. You can find the tool overview here. You can select and this tool list is frequently updated, and people are invited to add their own tools to this overview, so that you can present your new tools or tools that are not there onto the website. So a second thing we had to do is think about validation parameters. So we had to define them, validate each tool, and work out evaluation plans and test scenarios in cooperation with the libraries based on their requirements. So our methodology, won't go into much detail, was have an evaluation template structure, tool selection, compilation of evaluation material, and distribute it. So we had some evaluation forms. We worked out a test plan. Evaluation forms were based on tools, and there was a usability form. We tested, worked out evaluation test scenarios as a work plan with the libraries participating. And the end result will be in the blueprint on validation take-up. So our evaluation in the project was not only the evaluation of the tools, the evaluation of the library's experience, but we also have been evaluating our own evaluation procedure. See whether, based on the answers we got and the input from the libraries, is the procedure correct? Would we need to clarify some of the questions we put in the evaluation forms? So that is the end result there. So what was the take-up and support? We had 16 candidate libraries in the potential external libraries, and 9 were retained. We're very pleased with the enthusiasm and with the different libraries that wanted to participate. And what we basically did is provide assistance. So how would we do that? We asked the libraries to install on average 2 tools and test their performance and usability in a productive environment. We had some consortium libraries testing linguistic resources for enhancement of textual information retrieval. You hear something about that by Judith Roch of the KB. And we had technical partners experienced in different areas to provide online assistance. What were the libraries that participated? There were 9 in total. The Wikipolski Library, a Polish library, the General Historical Library of Salamanca, the Wrocław University Library, Slovak Chemical Library, the National Library of Finland, the Library of the University of Granada, the University Library of Leuven, the University Library of Antwerp, the University Library of Darmstadt. The Bibliothèque Virtuelle was involved as a project partner, Bibliothèque Nationale de France, the Koninklijke Bibliotheek, the Royal Library of the Netherlands, and the British Library. And they tested in total around 19 tools. So it was also interesting that some of the libraries tested similar tools. So that gives nice comparative results. Then the training. We produced training material for the tools, provided online training, and did training workshops. The training materials is available online on the Center of website in SCORM, and we have a Depuydt wiki. You can find the training material, and in the Depuydt wiki. And the Depuydt wiki is important because we would very much love for new tool providers or tool providers which have their tools in the overview and for which we haven't produced training material, because the training material we did was based on the selection of the libraries. And of course, another library could have a different use case with another relevant tool for which now no training material is produced. So everybody is kindly invited to work on the wiki and to add a new training material there for his or her own tool. So what are the conclusions of this work done in the work package? I won't tell anything about what the participating libraries did. They get the floor later, straight after me. But we have some general recommendations we saw, and that is, it's very important to translate your requirements if you want to test and evaluate a tool into a very detailed use case, including detailed description of the data format. You need test data or to produce test data. There are ample tools there on the website of the Center of Competence to do that. The next step is to determine tools and produce a work plan. But what we thought, our experience was, what is very important is to verify each use case internally, but also with external experts. The Center of Competence can help you there, and if necessary, can bring you into contact with the tool providers. because you might have expectations of a certain tool working in a certain context, which is totally not appropriate for the type of material you've been selecting. And that is a very useful step in the process. And we have provided good documentation and, in the form of evaluation, documentation structure in the form of an evaluation form. We think that is also very important. And to use experienced technical staff. Because if you want to work with evaluate tools in your own productive environment, it is important that you have an experienced staff to do the evaluation. What we have for tool providers is some useful, I hope, useful information as to the documentation. What we think would be very nice is that if each tool had a clear description of the purpose of the tool. Tool documentation focuses on technical aspects, how to install it and whatever, but what is the purpose of the tool? What are the formats the tool can handle? Provide a clear description of the type of material the tool can handle with reasonable results. Provide information on performance where possible. Provide a clear step-by-step description of the complete procedure that should be followed to get the best possible result, including training and tuning of parameters. Compact documentation if possible and minimize the interdependency of parts of the documentation. Some of what we experienced is that some of the information is so extensive that it is really very hard to get a quick insight into how the tools function.